move on to the Plug Uglies, who took their name from the tall plug hats that they always wore. The Plug Uglies were a big, vicious gang that flourished in the tough 5 Point section from 1825 until around the turn of the century, 1900. Now, before a fight, they would stuff their plug hats with wool and bits of leather, and then would pull them over their ears to cushion any blows to their heads. A fully outfitted Plug Ugly carried a paving brick in one hand and a knife or club in the other. He also wore a pistol in his belt, and he had heavily hobnailed boots on his feet. These hobnailed boots were very useful for stomping rival gang members to death. Every Plug Ugly was over 6 feet tall. Being 6 feet tall was a requirement for membership in the gang. And the hobnail boots and tall plug hats added to their intimidating size. Nothing scared other gangs more than the prospect of fighting an all-out street war against the gigantic Plug Uglies. At their peak, the Plug Uglies had over 1,500 members, but the gang eventually died off when other rival gangs grew more sophisticated and began relying on their brains which the Plug Uglies sadly lacked. The streets of New York City were a fearsome place in the mid-19th century, and few things were more alarming than the gang known as the Dead Rabbits. The Dead Rabbits took their name from the standard they always carried into battle, a dead rabbit on a pole. Their standard bearer was a tough little Irish woman called Hellcat Maggie. In those days, women were often included in the ranks of the toughest street gangs. There was equal opportunity for any girl or any gal who was ferocious enough and crazy enough for a street fight. Hellcat Maggie was famous for filing her front teeth to saber-toothed cat-like points, and she always wore extra long brass knuckles, which she called her fingernails. These brass knuckles had been honed by Hellcat Maggie into razor-sharp, weapons of death. Maggie was always the first into a fray, always the first into a fight, slashing and biting until her victim fell to his knees. But Maggie always let the Dead Rabbit boys do the actual killing. Hellcat Maggie was always too much of a lady for that kind of thing. Among the least known, strangest, and most mysterious of all these mid-19th century groups of organized thugs and hooligans was a gang called the Swamp Angels. The Swamp Angels made their headquarters in the sewers under one of New York City's worst tenements ever, the Gotham Court. A manhole in the building's basement gave easy access to the sewer from the slum building. Gotham Court housed more than 2,000 people in two rows of connected tenements set back to back and extending along Cherry Street. The entrance to Gotham Court was through either of two alleys on the east and west sides. This was called Single Alley and Double Alley. Double Alley was also known as Paradise Alley, after a popular song of the day. The Swamp Angels also had manhole entrances in both alleys. And the Angels had their hid their plunder on the side ledges of the sewer and in niches cut into the walls of the Gotham Court tenement building. The Swamp Angels' basement entrance allowed frightful and unholy vapors to seep up from the sewer and into Gotham Court, making it one of the most unhealthy spots in the city. The death rate was incredibly high. For example, of 183 babies born in the court over a 3-year period, 75 died within the first few weeks of their lives. Children were sometimes mauled mauled by huge rats the size of cats, that came up through the same holes that the Swamp Angels gang used. But the Angels were heedless of the misery that they caused, because the sewer was the gang's link to the docks of the East Side. The gang prowled the piers, stealing ships' cargo, and then hauling their booty back into the sewer. The police reluctantly tried following the Swamp Angels, but the dark and, smelly sewers were the gang's own territory, and a safe haven for these young criminals, and the police would often get lost in the sewer. The police tried posting officers at the docks to thwart these young thieves, but without much success, at least at first. Eventually, the nightly police patrols began to seriously cut back on the Swamp Angels' income. So they began hijacking cargoes on the street as they moved to and fro from the ships. They were still a gang, of course, but they were never again called the Swamp Angels. With that thought, we're going to take another musical break. When we return, we will continue our journey back across the